welcome to the City of Bettendorf Committee of the Whole meeting. Today is Monday, March 31st, 2025. It's 5 o'clock p.m. Thank you for joining us. We have a couple of consent agenda items to discuss before we move into the meat of the agenda for tomorrow night. The first item is a resolution setting a public hearing on a change in the sign ordinance. And for this presentation, we welcome our Community Development Director, Mark Hunt, and Senior City Planner, Taylor Beswick. Gentlemen, thank you for being here. You have the floor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Taylor, that's just 4 slides for you. This is one that we've talked about several times at goal setting, where we allow billboards, and we restricted that a little bit previously. We caught an error, and we want to narrow that down a little bit, so we're going to bring that to you. And we're also going to talk about city-sponsored banner signs, officially naming those as a sign type in the city code and where they can be located. So.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mayor. As Mark mentioned, we have 2 small amendments to the sign ordinance, and the purpose was to clean up some language that define official signs in our right-of-way. One of these official sign types is the Bettendorf light pole banner program signs, and then we added an area that would ban billboards in the I-80 area, specifically the I-80 urban renewal area. Going to our light pole banners real quick. We amended one section of code that defined different categories of official signs. One of those is those light pole banners pictured here. These would be only on city-owned light poles in the right-of-way. And all these banners shall follow administrative policy, so they'll have the Bettendorf logo on predominantly most of the banner, and then a sponsor section that's roughly a third of the total banner. And they're pictured as is, so this is what they look like. Second part of that ordinance amendment, as mentioned, the billboard exclusion. So we had a large billboard sign code amendment a few months ago. This is adding to that, just adding an area which would ban billboards or not allow new billboards in this area. Delineated in green, this is the I-80 urban renewal area. Our hopes that would allow no new billboards. Current billboards would be legally non-conforming, but upon removal, they would not be able to be converted or built new. Both of these amendments in this case were reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission and recommended for approval. And we can take any questions.
Any questions? Yes, Greg.
Thank you, Your Honor. The lamp or the street light, yeah, that one. Does the sponsor have to be in the area that the flag is, the banner?
So,
Or could if I owned a business in Moline, could I sponsor a banner?
right now the policy, administrative policy, is just what the logo or the sponsor name and logo. It's handled, the company is Community Showcase Banners that accept all the applications. I'm not aware of if there's a geographical limitation on that, but I defer to Mark.
Let me jump in on that a little bit. So the code now creates this sign type, and then there's administrative policy for how we actually bring the banners and the sponsors together. That's still staff's job to write that out, okay. And we can work with Chris Curran and our legal department to make sure that we have that geographic controls in there if appropriate. But right now, we don't have the full policy fully written out. Jeff, you want to jump in?
Sure, I would just suggest, if you recall back in mid-2024, I noted that these light pole banners were something we were considering. We had talked as a staff about putting light pole banners up in this area of the sports complex just as a beautification effort. When that came about, coincidentally, this Community Showcase Banners program came to us as well. And they provide these across the country to different communities, and then the sponsorship defrays that cost. So it was going to save us almost $50,000 as if we were going to do it ourselves out of the city's coffers. With that, they are soliciting Bettendorf businesses and getting the approval by city staff prior to having those printed on the light poles. They don't have any intent, I think, to your question, Councilmember Adamson, to go to other cities and solicit sponsorships of those. Are they specific to the TBK Sports Complex area? They're giving first priority to those businesses in that area. And if they chose not to, then they would solicit businesses in other parts of Bettendorf, but they don't have any intent on moving to Davenport or Moline or somewhere else to find sponsors.
Okay, I'm just trying, I'm trying to think of, could an Illinois business that sells marijuana, could happen? Could that, I mean, is there some way to prevent that from happening?
So they wouldn't solicit those businesses. They're not going to solicit Illinois businesses at all. That's not their intent. It's to,
An Illinois business could know about this, though, and solicit us. Just
so,
anyway, something to think about.
I think, and if I can jump in really
Yes, sir.
quick. This is,
Absolutely.
I think this is, the one distinction I would make is, this is not advertisement. This is a sponsorship of an official, these are designated official signs. These are city signs. This is a way for us to have these banners on only city-owned poles, and to have those signs be sponsored by somebody. So we are in the process of putting together this policy. If you have, input on that policy, it's not completed at this time. We're setting the public hearing for the ordinance. But we are putting that policy into place. I think Jeff explained pretty well who the likely sponsors would be. But I hear your concern. I do think it's different than just advertising. It's sponsors of these signs, so we have a little bit more control over who can do that.
Okay.
Other questions? All right, then I'd like to entertain a motion that the setting of the public hearing, consent O, remain on tomorrow night's agenda.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We'll take it up tomorrow night. Let's move to consent R. This is a resolution authorizing staff to issue an informational letter and survey for the new police station. For that, we welcome our Assistant City Administrator, Jeff Ryder. Jeff, you have the floor.
thank you. Thank you, Your Honor, and members of council. Appreciate the time this evening. As the mayor stated, on the consent agenda tomorrow evening will be a resolution authorizing staff to issue an informational letter and survey for the consideration of a new police station. So in the audience tonight, we have John Mahan from Bray Architects with us as well. So if you do have any questions, we're happy to oblige and answer any questions you may have. So over the course of the past, probably 6 to 8 months, we've been working with Bray conceptually on what it would look like to construct a police station in Bettendorf. We do know that there's some physical constraints with our existing facility. It is rather small and landlocked. It's not today centrally located in the city of Bettendorf. And due to the fact that the existing police station was constructed in 1959 and not constructed as a police station originally, it does have some security concerns that a modern-day police station would address. So what we are asking for here is a resolution allowing the staff to issue a letter to the constituents and the residents of our community to gauge their input and their interest in seeing a new police station constructed here in Bettendorf. So on the screen, you'll see an informational letter. This would be issued to every resident in Bettendorf. And it just talks through how you can take a survey to tell us what you think about what a new police station in Bettendorf could and should do for our community. It lays out some of the challenges. As we've seen increased calls for service and our population grow to the north especially, having a more centrally located police station is something that will help with those response times and providing better, more adequate service to our constituents. Also, the usefulness, the safety, security, and potential for future growth of a police station are all things that were contemplated. And this space that we've identified up near the post office does give us that opportunity. It talks about other police stations in the area with population sizes for those other communities and when they were constructed. It talks about our population growth, and it talks about the existing size of our police station as roughly 15,000 feet. Based on the work that Bray did and putting together the needs assessment for the police station, we've identified that a new police station would be somewhere in the area of 38,000 square feet, and then again, centrally located up near Crow Creek Park. It talks about the estimated cost of a new police station, And then it goes into survey and talks about what the potential impact on a residential and commercial house and or business would be, and ask residents what they feel about it and if they could be considerate of support for that. So again, all we're asking for here is the opportunity to issue this letter and provide this information to the public and get their feedback so we can then consider proceeding forward with the next phases, which would be public open houses April 28th and 30th, where people can learn more, and then take this into the summer months where we would gather more information and see if the formation of a committee to help with this process would be necessary. So with that, Your Honor, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Jeff? Greg?
Thank you, Your Honor. This is really a question for the administrator more than Jeff. Over the weekend, Councilmember Adamson and I had a chance to discuss this briefly. And in the survey, when you mail it back, you actually mail it back to a place in Wisconsin as opposed to mailing it back to, say, City Hall. So we asked the administrator why that was the case. He gave a perfectly acceptable answer, but I thought maybe the council would want to know why Wisconsin as opposed to City Hall.
That was classified information, Greg, and I
Sorry,
can't release
I
it
withdraw the
publicly.
question.
Good question. In the contract with Bray Architects, this was contemplated as part of their work. They do this kind of work, and we knew in a potential referendum circumstance, we would like to get the perceptions of the community. The company that they work with as a sub to them, Community Perceptions, is located in Wisconsin. So all of the answers to the survey will go to them. And so the staff will never see the surveys directly. We'll get the information as it's compiled, but it does go to the subcontractor, to Bray Architects, and the budget for the survey is included in Bray's fee. So when we hired Bray, the dollars were allocated for this service, and it is for Community Perceptions, a company out of Slinger, Wisconsin.
Other questions? The other Greg?
Thank you, Ron. So it's every household, every,
Yeah, so that's a great question. Councilmember Addison asked if every household, and actually it's if every voter would like to take the survey, they can. So if you have 2 voters in your house, you can request an additional survey and take 2. But each one of them is specific and it has a unique code on it, so you couldn't take the survey, say 6, 7, 8 times individually.
Okay.
But yes, every voter has the opportunity to fill out a survey. It will be mailed to every household. And to follow up on Councilmember Jager's point as well, if folks want to simply drop the survey off to Bettendorf City Hall, they can, and then we pass them along to the survey company as well. So you really have 3 ways to get it to us: mail it in, drop it off, or take it digitally, and all that data is aggregated.
Lisa, did you have something?
Yeah, at some point, will we be getting from the consultants a timeline as far as the activities between now and a referendum?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Scott?
Thank you, Your Honor. So when and how will the public get maybe a deeper dive into the breakdown of the presumed cost, the $27 million? Because I think you guys have done an extraordinarily good job of trying to be lean, and yet it's still a large number of people want to understand.
So how we arrived at that number, or how?
Maybe the breakdowns,
Sure.
you know, a little bit more than just, but I think the work's there, I just don't know.
Yeah, so that's a good question. And what we have done is we started out, and actually the budget was quite larger. We did what we felt was some good value engineering on both the physical structure and size, and also just the intricacies of the building. As part of this as well, Estes Construction has come on as our construction manager at risk, and they're the ones that estimated and vetted out this number to $27 million for us. And once we get farther down the scope, what'll happen is there would be the formation of a committee that's not public officials, not city staff, that would take this out to the public and provide information through public coffees, public meet and greets, neighborhood meetings, and they would give them the full detail on anything they would like to know more on relative to this project. And additionally, like I said, April 28th and 30th at the Waterfront Convention Center, we'll have informational meetings. And both Estes and Bray will be there as well to talk about the full development. They'll have some they'll be grayscaled because we haven't got fixtures or treatments of the exterior done yet, but they'll have some high-level concepts of what the facility would look like. And we can talk through all those costs if anybody has questions at that time as well. Then additionally, Angie has set up a place on our website, and once we get into this a little bit further, a lot more of that detail will be laid out on our website. People can go look anytime. And much like we did whenever the levy increase came last year, we've also set up on our website, which is laid out in this letter as well, a special address page where you can go in and type in your address specifically and see what the impact could be to you if you chose to support this as well, relative to a tax impact.
Well, not arguing with the process, just trying to understand if someone has a preconceived notion about, boy, that number is either, that seems low or that seems off, or I'd like to know more, and they're asked to give an opinion whether they could support, it may end up being, well, I don't know, I need to know more before I, so I just wonder if that would skew our results one way or the other. But certainly, you know, it's a tried and true process for many folks.
Yeah, so part of this letter has some of those questions in there about what more information would you like to see. The informational sessions on the 28th and 30th are in advance of when the survey is due. So if anyone would have any questions, they can come to those and then fill out the survey. That's totally apropos as well. But as we've gone through this as well, if folks have any questions when they do receive this survey, we're in a place right now where we can provide any information they may have on those costs. But you know, generally speaking, I think we were pleasantly surprised at the number. We were expecting a larger number. Based on construction costs and square footage costs today, we thought it would be larger. But we can talk through all that with any resident that would like to call us at City Hall. We're definitely happy to oblige.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Your Honor.
You bet. Any other questions? Yes, Greg again.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just a quick follow-up. I just jumped on the city's webpage, City News Highlights, and it has like 5 blocks of various highlights that are currently going on. As we go into this survey, would it be possible to make one of those highlights information about the police station, or maybe a quick link to some of these higher level?
Yeah,
So if it's on the very front page, you're gonna get more eyeballs, I think, than if it's 2 or 3 in.
Yeah, absolutely. And we did something similar with that tax levy notice. We put that front and center. Again, we're trying to be as informational as possible, so we don't want to put the cart before the horse. So if we have the opportunity to get this informational letter to people and that authorization is made, we do have strategy steps in place to start implementing from there on. We just don't want to jump the gun yet.
Understood. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, then I'd like to entertain a motion that the letter and survey information remain on tomorrow night's consent agenda at R.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, let's move to the remaining consent agenda items. If there's a particular item any council member would like to discuss, now is the time. Barry.
Thank you, Your Honor. On item N, I've got a question about when we lock in standards. Like I noticed on this particular replat, the information paper says that we're only going to have 52-foot right-of-way, we're only going to have 4-foot sidewalks, when our code says we have 5-foot sidewalks. So what point in time do we lock that in? And
Mr. Hunt, thank you.
Thanks, Your Honor. That question's about the
Spencer Hollow 6.
Spencer Hollow, thank you, Spencer Hollow subdivision.
Right.
It was already built out at the 52-foot standard, and all the lots were already laid out in the kind of the master overall plan. So we went with the 52-footer to continue it out for continuity's sake. As far as a specific timeline, I don't think we have that policy, you know, written in stone. It's really kind of a call them as we see them. That subdivision was pretty much done at that point. That was the last piece to come in, and it made sense just to have that continuity throughout.
okay, thank you, because I was curious as to, you know, how long we go with
Yeah, and that, you know, that's one of the
with
ones
the
that
old
had been
standards.
come in years ago almost now.
Yeah,
really
that's
years ago,
what I'm
so
thinking of. Yes.
And it built out incrementally since then.
Other questions on any item on consent? All right, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We'll take up the consent agenda as written tomorrow evening. Any questions on items to appear tomorrow evening? Yes, Greg.
Your Honor, thank you. Tomorrow, we're going to waive the rules and approve the change of the rates for the various enterprises and utilities in the city. I was talking to the administrator about this over the weekend too, and just curious. Jason's off.
He is out.
Is it better to wait till tomorrow?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, let me do it.
We didn't
that
get a
way.
chance to visit today.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
I'll do it till tomorrow.
All right. We don't have to approve the regular agenda. Let's move to our presentation. This is on the update to the zoning ordinance. For that, we welcome our Community Development Director, Mr. Mark Hunt, as well as our Senior Planner, Mr. Taylor Beswick. Thank you, and welcome back, as well as our esteemed attorney, Chris Curran. Lawyers can't forget the lawyers, man.
We're batting first and third in today's lineup, if you're keeping score at home. Taylor's got a slideshow for you that kind of updates you on what I know you're all waiting for, which is the update to the zoning ordinance after the comprehensive plan. It is good practice to update your zoning ordinance. We're really excited to be doing this. We have what I will call a preliminary draft in place. That preliminary draft was done as part of our zoning ordinance, or as part of our comp plan. We carved out a piece of our comp plan budget to have RDG give us a preliminary ordinance that consolidated our ordinance, aligned it with our code, but we need to go through it now and get some direction from you guys and write the final ordinance. And that's what we're doing. And I've sent you a couple emails. I've met with one or two of you. I'm happy to meet with you, Taylor, or happy to meet with others. So if you're thinking of the old college 101 class, we're opening the syllabus today, and we're gonna take you through this class, or you'll take us through it perhaps, over the next 3-4 months here as we really dig into it. I think Taylor's presentation is going to speak for itself. Here's some things I would like you to remember, and these are the things we're trying to fix. Do you remember when we had to rezone for the alternative school to come next to the school that was already there? Do you remember when we had to try to define microbreweries and distilleries because they weren't in code? Do you remember how many times we have a C2 development that ends up being residential? Those things should be familiar to you, that we struggled with them. This body struggled with them. Those are problems in our code. Now, every code has problems. No code is written perfectly, but we're trying to identify those, and you help us remember some of those cases. We're trying to write those mistakes out of the current code. And we're gonna do it in this code that's skinnier, so less words. It's gonna be easier to read and less confusing to the general public and to staff. Let's be honest, if it's confusing me, I can only imagine what John Q. Public thinks when they open that thing up. So Taylor will take you through the real ins and outs of where we're at right now. This process has been underway for some time. We've been doing it with planning and zoning. We're gonna do it with the private sector and our developers as well. But we wanted to catch you up, and we wanna get your input tonight or offline, however you see fit.
Thank you, Mark. So as Mark mentioned, we've been going, having updates with our Planning and Zoning Commission since January. Even before then, we had an opening session. But we wanted to just take it back and to reiterate why we're updating this zoning ordinance after our comprehensive plan update. And I'll go through the highlights of some of these points, but legal protection is a big thing. We need to change our zoning ordinance to be consistent with our comprehensive plan. We need to update it for certain regulations that are outdated. We're getting new laws from the state that we have to update it for. It's a big point. Changing development patterns, we all know. We've had our most recent code update was in 2017, and prior to that, it reused a lot of code that was probably pre-2000. Post COVID, we've had a lot of different development patterns, more drive-throughs, different mixed uses, et cetera. So that's another one. Another reason why we're updating. Plain language is a big part. Our code is very dense, takes lawyers through it a lot of the times. We want it to be not only readable by staff, by our elected officials, but our citizens as well, and want it to be transparent. So that might require some, graphics, some handouts, et cetera, but that's a big goal of ours. And consistency, there's confusing concepts that are contradictory. We want to eliminate those. Errors and omissions, there have been some errors we found that we want to fix. But the overarching goal is to streamline it, make it efficient. We want our developers to have an efficient process. We want there to be reduced barriers for landowners. If someone wants to go build a garage in their backyard, we don't want them to have to jump through all these hoops and read all these different parts of code. So we're trying to get it streamlined, efficient, and consistent. Shown here is our timeline. It's been updated. We started this project, this zoning ordinance update, last summer, really. Once we adopted our comprehensive plan update, we kicked off the project, the zoning code update, with RDG staff. They totally reorganized our ordinance, consolidated chapters, moved things around, and that kind of gave us the framework to what we're working off now. In the fall and the winter, we did some research on other ordinances, diagnosed some issues that we found, errors, et cetera. We also did some background and overview with the Planning and Zoning Commission, and got some ideas of what kind of where we should be looking. Right now, the winter and spring, we've been engaging and collaborating with our Planning and Zoning Commission, now or City Council, and we have meetings scheduled with our land developers and builders. So we have some considerations, some ideas that we want to bounce off you and give us direction. Are we going the right direction? Are we thinking this the wrong way? And we hope to get that engagement and collaboration consolidated and put into a draft, which we can get some public, we can put online and put some public input. But this summer, that draft and codification will happen. And then hopefully we stay on schedule. Later this year, we can have a new zoning ordinance.
The fun thing about that slide is that what's going on with the state is also affecting how we're writing our zoning code. So things like landscaping, things like ADUs, if the state takes those away from us or adds to those, we have to change our zoning code. So some of this stuff, we're kind of fixing it while we're flying it, to use the term. So we want to get as much of that information and kind of let that process at the state level get through at least this legislative session and then get our code done.
Yes. Preemption has been a thing that we'll deal with and continue to deal with. I mentioned consolidation and what RDG has already done with our Bettendorf staff. On the left-hand side, you have what our currently adopted zoning code is. The colors kind of represent the subject matter. Going to the right-hand side, it was consolidated into 10 chapters and one appendix. We currently have over 16. We have the same subjects in the same chapter. It's much easier to find definitions of zoning districts or definitions of words and use types, where our sign regulations are, et cetera. So that was a big undertaking. Took some months, but RDG did a great job. So now we have a baseline to work off of and really concentrate on some of the policy ideas that are embedded in the zoning ordinance.
And it's a huge, and Taylor did a lot of this, helping them consolidate this, but this is a huge user interface improvement. If you were trying to design a commercial development, you had to go to our zoning code. You probably went to the code that you were in for C1. You went to definitions, you went to a use table. You went and found a landscape handbook somewhere else on the city website, referenced that. Maybe they didn't align because you got the wrong version. All that is now consolidated into one and is so much more efficient. So we're really happy to do this. Now, to put it in practice and get the chapters actually written out fully is our next step.
So that moves us to some of these major changes, these big bullet points that are considering, our staff is considering and proposed to our Planning and Zoning Commission. They haven't voted on anything, they've just given their input, and we're doing the same tonight, just trying to hear some feedback on some of these policies. Feel free to ask questions as we go through. This is kind of more of an open discussion for the next 2 slides, but I can start going through those. Beginning of our ordinance has our procedures, how we review developments. One of those is site plans, as you are well aware. Staff has proposed to kind of tweak our site plan review process by having our planning, zoning, and city council concentrate on our large site plans that have, major changes, new buildings, big intensity changes or density changes versus small building additions under a certain square footage. We were proposing to put that through a staff committee which would be our Development Review Committee for transparency. That is one of the process changes that we're proposing. Another one related to that is these site plans, when approved, if they are never built or constructed, right now, you could sit with the same site plan approval for years and years and years. We propose that they expire over a certain amount of time, because things change around that property, the environmental conditions change. So we feel that if it isn't ever built as approved, it should come back for reapproval.
A really good example of that one is out at TBK near where the IRT Golf Complex is. At one point in the mid-1970s, maybe early 1980s, it was approved for like an RV campground retreat kind of location. And that, based on our code, that site plan was still legal, was still binding, if you will. Probably not the use we wanted to see, given what happened next door with the sports complex. So, those type of things, and again, we're happy to take questions or comments as you see fit, Mayor. Those type of things are things we think we can clean up.
So those are some process-oriented items. Another addition, we don't have the full list, but we didn't retract, but expanded our use types. So when you have a zoning ordinance, you get a development, you have to have a use type. Is it a restaurant? Is it a bar? Is it a personal service? All these are different use types. We expanded those. We included microbreweries, microdistilleries. Mark has some more, I think.
Well, one of the biggest ones was the C2. C2 is so wide open that every use type fits into that, and that we think that's a real problem because you're seeing C2 become really a residential use type and not a commercial use type. As far as the defined uses, drive-through and drive-up are conflated in our code. They're mixed up all the time, and when you read it on just a plain reading, you don't really know if you're talking about a drive-through or drive-up. So those are some low-hanging fruit that we've already identified and changed.
Looking at our zoning districts, we are proposing to update our agricultural districts to align with the counties. Currently, our agricultural districts, which have residential dwellings on them, are not large enough for septic fields. Now, the city won't accept new septic. It's our policy if we can, but there are existing septics all across the city in places where we probably won't get sewer because of topography or the distance from current sewer. So we're trying to look at protecting the intensification or increase in density of areas without sewer. So that's an important one. We also have a situation that's existed since, I believe these areas were annexed into the city in the 70s, where these subdivisions are in our ag district, and it might be because they were on septic or because they had a lack of a street right-of-way, and now they do, or they didn't have sidewalks, some element that they don't really quite meet the threshold of our single-family residential district. So we propose to put the ones that are on city sewer and Iowa American Water, put those in a district, but it still can be, it's a little larger than our R1, has higher standards, but it's not as onerous as a septic ag district.
So think about Sterling Woods, an older development that is part of the city that does not conform to our R1 code. So if you zoned it R1, it's actually not conforming. So if you create a non-conformity, which can cause problems for the landowner, we are proposing an ag district, call it an ex-urban district, that would kind of encompass these areas, put them into a conforming district so they are not in violation of their own city code. And that way, when they come to us with fences and decks and things like that, we can actually process the code or process the development. Right now, they're all kind of non-conforming. So this actually makes them more conforming. It improves their standing, both as landowners and for staff, and trying to help them when they want to develop on their property or change their property. So that's a big one.
Yeah, and you might wonder why is conformity such an important issue? Of course, staff and the city wants all of our zoning codes more powerful if all these buildings are in conformity, but really for the homeowner, our staff gets calls all the time from either mortgage lenders or banks, insurance. If that property is out of conformance, it really puts a red flag on that. It holds up either sales or insurance. It's huge issues, and we have large subdivisions that it's a reoccurring issue. So Staff wants to fix that, so this is good for the citizens and landowners.
So one of the things you're probably seeing right now is that also, all these changes actually change the map. So we'll actually have not just a new zoning code, we'll have a new zoning map. And in fact, a rezoning of many parts of the city, a rezoning that we would claim would be beneficial to those users because it gets them from a non-conforming use to a conforming use. But that's one of the big implications here.
Moving on, our new comprehensive plan and future land use map has a conservation subdivision land use. So we will need to implement a new zoning district for that. This will probably only be highlighted out north of Interstate 80, maybe east of Criswell, if that is ever annexed. But it's really to try to preserve existing conditions, trees, topography, so we don't get these flattened areas, which then we'll have to deal with decreased water quality, stormwater and runoff, et cetera. We'd incentivize keeping the land, preserving the land, and not grading it all flat through some maybe intensities, performance basically. You get increased density if you keep 50% of your land in situ. That's the general. We don't have the specifics for that, but we're working on those. That's actually where we're at with
And I
the.
think one of the big benefits that we can get out of that is stormwater improvement, especially in these areas that are really undulating. We're trying to manage stormwater anyway. Let the nature do the stormwater. We'll design where we have to, but we'll try to stay out of that game and let the ravines stay ravines, especially in that part of town where we do have a lot more topography.
Yeah, everything's running down the main creekways, so if we can keep it localized versus having to buy more land or take on more land for these giant stormwater ponds, that benefits everyone. Moving on to our next bullet point here, staff is proposing to consolidate all our single-family zoning. We have an R1 district and an R2 district, and developers have been using those districts interchangeably, and there's really, I don't think many can tell the difference between the two. For simplicity, for consistency, we are proposing, and this was proposed by RG as well, to just consolidate all of our single family into one district with the same setbacks. Now, that's the minimum setback. I think you'll still find most of these subdivisions come at a very large setback over that. We have very different types of single-family subdivisions. They're not going to the minimum lot size. They're still being proposed at double or even triple that lot size. So this is just creating one district at a minimum. That's proposed this to our Planning and Zoning Commission. I think they agreed with the consistency, and they do agree that they are getting subdivisions in both districts, and there's really no difference between them. And so staff is proposing to do that for simplicity's sake. Any comments?
No, that one's good.
Question.
Yep.
Does that create difficulties when you have infill lots?
So currently, the districts have the same use types, single-family detached homes. The only difference is the lot size and the setback. One has a 30-foot setback and one has a 25-foot setback. So
So we could have a older neighborhood then, R1, that's all built out except for one vacant lot. The house burned down a couple of years ago or something. Now a developer comes in to build on that lot, he can then go to only 20-foot setback, even though all the rest of the houses have 30-foot
Yeah, I
setback.
think that's a good concern. I think infill is one of those things you want to watch out for, right? And
Right.
because you can have almost a predatory type infill, and we certainly don't want that. But there's also places where you do want infill, right? Because you need it so we don't keep sprawling out. We fill in where we're at.
Oh,
I think
I'm supporting of infill.
I think one of the ways you might manage that is with an established setback as part of your code. So when you do have a developed neighborhood, you look at the established setback of that neighborhood, and that's what you use, or some reasonable variation thereof, as opposed to, just the new rule of that code. So that would be an established setback. We actually have some language like that already in our code, but I would promote that to solve
Okay.
that problem.
Thank you.
But I do think, maybe more in like the R3 parts of town, we do have some thoughts about working to try to preserve those areas, but also make them more conforming to the R3, because we have a lot of, especially central city and down, we have a lot of small lot subdivisions or small lot homes that don't really conform to the district that they're in. So we would like to maybe reclassify that district to make them conforming again. Again, our whole point is to get conformity, not non-conformity, to make this better for everybody. So a landowner knows what they're allowed to do and they're not just existing in non-conformance.
Yeah, and what Mark's referencing is some of these homes that were platted prior to the 1950s. They weren't really designed for two-car garages. They have really reduced setbacks. Our oldest part's of Bettendorf. We want landowners to keep that housing there. We don't want the housing to go away, but we also want them to have use of their land. It's not so constrained, because it's not the same type of single-family lot that you have in newer parts of town. So we're trying to develop just a district, and it's really a small area when you consider what Bettendorf was prior to 1950, town of 5,000, a very small geographic area. So that's what we're proposing to kind of address some of those single family and really preserve that single family where it is, so people don't have to move on or it gets reduced. The last point on the slide was staff initially contemplated and proposed allowing accessory dwelling units in certain cases on single-family lots, maybe through a special use permit process, or in certain zoning districts. We currently really don't allow accessory dwelling units unless they're inside your house. The state legislature, in the meantime, has passed a law, it has not been signed by the governor, that will mandate those accessory dwelling units on single-family lots. So we have no choice anymore. So we'll have to, this is a good example of working with the evolving state, the bills that are being passed at the Capitol. But currently the bill reads as a single-family lot shall be allowed to have a accessory dwelling unit that's 1,000 square feet or 50% the size of the house. That can be in a garage, or can be in the attic, or it can be attached. So we're still kind of reading through that bill, and it hasn't been passed by the governor, like I said, but this is a good example how it's changing our zoning code, and we'll have to adapt.
But it's passed both houses and
Yeah,
awaiting the
correct.
governor's signature, so it's likely she'll sign.
Likely.
I believe she will, yeah.
Yeah.
So this is where we're at today. What Taylor just went through is about 5 chapters worth of zoning code. And that slide of major policy changes, considerations, we're ready to start putting pen to paper and filling these out now. So kind of need some information from you guys. Are we going the right direction? If not, stop us, because we don't want to do a bunch of work unnecessarily. Things like minor site plan approval process, site development plans that should expire at some reasonable point. Those type of things we need, and I understand, this is more of an informational session, but if you're in agreement, let us know, or if not, let us know before we go too far down the road and then start sharing this with the public, thinking we have a certain direction, and maybe we don't. We don't want to do that, of course.
And we do have meetings set up with the developer community. We're doing more of a one-on-one. They have to come forward too. It's a two-way street. So we'll get some input on the developers, builders. They're really affected the most, I'd say, a lot with the new construction. We can hear their input and communicate that to you as well.
Another slide.
But yeah, I do have a few more items. The previous points
Go ahead,
were,
Greg, you got a question?
Just a quick question. At the 30,000 foot level, zoning can be considered a use function or an aesthetic function or a hybrid. Would you guys say that your goal in this is to try and keep the existing use predominant zoning code? Are we moving to aesthetics as much as the use? Are we trying to keep a hybrid, or how would you see it at the top level?
so
Go ahead.
we are not proposing to change our hybrid approach. And what Greg's referencing is we have use types in our code, and we still have zoning districts, R1, C1, I1, et cetera. But we also have our development character areas, which are really that aesthetics form and the form of that building. Does the building look to be a part? The uses should be, inside that. we're still having that hybrid approach, or proposing that hybrid
I
approach.
would say we're leaning into it, Fred. We're leaning into the hybrid approach. We want to make, especially under the DCAs, which is on this next slide, even more functional than they have been.
Yeah.
We really only have 2 areas that have chosen that. We think it's partially because of the size requirement, so we want to lower that size requirement. I'm jumping into the next slide here. But we're leaning into the hybrid approach, and I think you could even see that hybrid approach, depending on how we do that downtown zoning district, we could lean into it there as well.
It seems to me that in a lot of times when neighbors are upset, some of it is overuse, but a lot of it is over impacts to the neighborhood. And so trying to look at and consider the impacts early on in the process and being able to respond to the residents early on in the process has value.
Yeah. I think one of the failures of zoning right now is we grew up with this concept of, houses are over here, commercial's in the middle, and industry is over here, and they shall never meet. They will always be apart. And then we realized there's some real problems with that, from transportation and land use, consumption. And so when we do get the people that say, hey, I want my house to be next to a cornfield forever, well, we've kind of created that perception, right? By the way we did zoning for so long. I think we as a city, and this is before me, you had this hybrid model that you adopted. We're leaning into that. I think doing more of that will start to reduce some of that, not in my backyard, to use a common phrase. And I think people actually, when they live it, they like it better. They like to have their facilities, their amenities near them, and not have to drive 20 minutes to work and 20 minutes to the park and then back home.
And the DCA, the form-based zoning principle, you have a master plan. So you're voting on a true plan of the area, and that's at the zoning level, the zoning decision level, that the neighbors, the stakeholders get to see that. I think that helps a lot in knowing that has to be amended and changed as the project develops. The other form of zoning, and we can't have that everywhere because there's just a owner of land that wants to rezone it than just to sell it for he doesn't know what, that can't happen. So there has to be, in my opinion, both of those forms of zoning. You can't get a concept for just a speculation land that's commercial, for instance. So I think those are the two differences in those types of zoning. And when we get that master plan, when you get like the Genesis, for example, that has the buildings in their location, the parking, et cetera, I think neighbors react to that. It's much more comforting than saying it could be a whole list of different uses. Moving on, and this was related, we as staff have felt, at least anecdotally, that the C2 district in commercial has presented some problems based on how wide open it is. One problem, and Mark can go on this a little more, is when we think it's really directed at commercial, we've found our residential developers to use it for residential purposes instead of using our residential zoning districts for various reasons of berms or density or building separation. So we kind of, this is an issue because then we have our commercial, which is then pushed out of that residential area and it has to find another place to go. So it's really, it kind of throws off all of our planning of corners and potential commercial areas in
Yeah,
town.
the corners on the major north-south routes of Bettendorf, which is Devil's Glen and Middle Road, we've had lots of interesting cases have come up on those, and some pretty vociferous arguments have occurred on those. And I would argue that because C2 took up residential space and then pushed commercial elsewhere, it's going to land somewhere, folks. Somebody's going to want to put that drive-through, that coffee shop in somewhere. It was pushing it out to maybe unsuspecting residents. And I think we need to probably reel in C2. We like the multifamily style development. We think that needs to be involved in our city, but it was always hitting C2, so it was showing up at these corners that were showing up as residential when that corner probably should have been commercial, and we had that problem.
Or at least mixed use.
2, 3, 4 times, yeah, or mixed use, yeah, 2, 3, 4 times, and you kind of pushed it on to somebody else, right? Had to land somewhere. You're going to need commercial for those residents, and I think we caused our own problems.
And so some ideas to combat that would be, one of the issues with the C2 is that it's probably one of our most intensive districts and wide open districts. And this staff would propose creating another commercial district, which kind of takes some of those high impact uses. You're talking auto-oriented uses, really a lot of auto-oriented uses, taking those out and having them in a designated district.
This is the car wash question, the gas station question, right? This is the one you guys get. Why do we have so many car washes? This is the one you get, right?
Gas station, yeah. That would make those types of development more, the intent is more clear. There, we don't have to do conditional rezonings, or there's just been a lot of extra work because of how wide open the C2 district is. And there are spots in town where these uses, I think, are compatible, but when the intent is clear, to rezone it to that district versus right now, yes, there might be a special use permit, but that goes through our Board of Adjustment, and that decision does not go to City Council ever. It goes to District Court if it wants to be challenged. So if this is a rezoning for a district that's auto-oriented, it goes to our planning and zoning, it goes to council, and it has a full vote.
Takes those uses out of C2, which was causing use some consternation, puts them into an auto-oriented district use, will come up with a better name, and locates those on major roadways.
That's one part of it. Another part would be really directing those residential developments to the correct district. If there's and then requiring a truly mixed-use district, say it's not large enough to be a DCA, but we have 20% commercial and 80% residential on top, on upper floors, then that we would allow those. But I think we really need to demand more out of some of our parcels in town that have the potential for these mixed uses, because we're not gonna get those back. And we're running, as we could develop north and east, there's only so many corners and so many primary commercial areas that if those turn residential, our interior streets and our high trafficked areas are not going to support commercial based off of the trips. So those are our two solutions we kind of propose, the mixed use, pushing all the 100% residential developments to that correct district, and then creating a new district, which makes C2 a lot more of a neighborhood commercial, which it's described as, and we could create the more auto corridor district for those other uses. Thoughts?
I think it's important to preserve the commercial areas. We've time and time again said, well, it's been 5 years and no commercials come, so I want to do some residential here. That's caused us trouble.
Yep.
We need to do a better job of saying, no, that's commercial for a reason.
All right, and I think that's
Yeah, Greg?
On the new district for auto-oriented uses, there are other areas in the Quad Cities that along major thoroughfares seem to be dominated by auto-oriented uses. And when it's use after use after use, excuse me, it can look, I don't know that it does, it can look a little junky. As you go through this process, would it be wise to consider some sort of distance separation between used car lot, used car lot, used car lot, so that you don't have a proliferation of one use with the visual impact that 3 adjoining uses doing the same thing can create?
I think that's a great idea and that would go into more of our supplemental regulations, where we say, we identify those specific uses, even if they're permitted in that district. And we currently have those for certain uses, but we don't have them for these auto-oriented uses. So I think staff can take a look at that. Moving on from commercial.
Comment on that.
Oh, go ahead.
It seems to me that we could partially offset the problem that Greg is talking about with a little bit more, with more trees. if you put some trees in, instead of just having a used car lot next to a used car lot next to a used car lot, where it's all asphalt and, no trees, that's what causes the junky look that he's talking about.
Right, yeah, you could have some design or performance standards built into that district, into that
Correct.
code for that district.
That's what I'm looking
That
for.
would maybe be enhanced or different than other commercial uses, spacing of certain types of businesses so they're not clustered together, landscaping, even aesthetic. You could build that in, yeah, buffering, you could build that into that district.
And the parts that we're discussing are out of code. Once we've identified these districts, identify these uses, then we get into, okay, how far, our buffering, our landscaping, our parking, those are chapters later on that we haven't got to, even with planning zoning. So we just need to identify, are these districts even the right, are we down the right road? But it sounds like we're getting some positive feedback. A couple more items from some major policy changes. We have we have 3 industrial districts right now, I-1, I-2, and I-3. Our I-1 district they're barely used. We have 2 spots in town. One of them's our Public Works building, and the other one's our Far East boundary, Terrell's Edition, down south of US 67. Staff has had feedback already from our developer community. We kind of need they're requesting a kind of a commercial, but maybe like indoor storage, some of a lighter industrial manufacturing that's kind of contained indoors. And we don't really have that district right now. Staff is trying to draft up a district that doesn't use the word industrial, but has those elements. Maybe it's useful for the back lot of a commercial development. We have developments like that you don't even know what's inside of it. It could be a server farm, it could be maybe indoor. We have the storage for production with the gas station, not the gas station, but
Linco would be
yeah,
a good example.
Linco.
Would be a good example. It's basically a warehouse. It's very
Warehousing.
automated. It's very clean. It's very techy. So kind of technology, maybe a
So
technology
it'd
industry district.
be an infill district that really doesn't utilize the high trafficked areas where we want our commercial sales, services, those things to be, but can utilize buildings that they just don't fit anywhere right now.
The old industrial districts just don't, we're not making tractors anymore. That's just not what we have.
Mark already mentioned this, but the proposal would be to, right now, our downtown master plan is an overlay district. We still have those underlying, those C1s, the C2s, the R, all those different districts underneath it. But we have this beautiful pretty new master plan that has a future land use in it and has all these design characteristics in it, how the buildings should look, how the streets should look. Proposal would be to just create a downtown zoning district that really relies more on that master plan for guidance, not so much the zoning code of densities, et cetera, because really we have a very small downtown area to work with. Our major streets, there's only so many parcels that we have to develop. So we want to get it right, and I think really the aesthetics, the character, how the parking can function. We want that to be more of rely on that master plan versus get in the way of contradictory zoning code that really isn't designed for a downtown. It's designed for a citywide. So that'd be a proposal. We currently it's mostly guided by the downtown master plan, but this would probably rezone it. And you're seeing this in other communities just across the river in Moline. They have a downtown master plan, and they have their own zoning for their downtown. It really puts that planning, that master plan as the guiding document.
Think about, and maybe you recall this, the administrative burden we put on for the golf shop that's right across the old Bettendorf Kitchen and Bath. It's right across from City Hall here. They had to go to Board of Adjustment, they had to go to Planning and Zoning, maybe had to go to Board of Adjustment twice to convert. What we all want to have happen is have these old parcels that are in our downtown convert and be functional, bring residents, bring visitors. And the administrative process, because our code was so complex, I mean, it was 4 or 5 meetings for the guy before he finally got through to do a pretty simple project. I think consolidating that into a downtown zoning district would make that a lot easier for those users.
Create efficiencies for our smaller business users, and then entrepreneurs, and kind of promote our downtown, which is really what we need to do to make things happen there. The last two are DCAs. We want to lower the requirement to make them more attractive for developers. That's a size requirement. We've talked about this a lot, so I won't go into it. We don't have that exact requirement yet, but maybe it's 5 acres. We really need to get those other districts formulated so we can test the code. And then another thing was brought up was we currently have our Utica Ridge overlay district. Is it still working? Does it still have a purpose? That was just a open-ended question, I guess. It's kind of was designed for, I believe, hotels, research, possibly.
Yeah, and is it, I mean, it's filled in, so is it done, or would we want something else? Are we good with it? Is that one off the list, and we just move on with Utica?
So these are some ideas. We don't necessarily need feedback tonight, but but get a hold of us, and we do need feedback eventually, so we know which direction to go.
Okay.
Really, we kind of covered this. This will require a new zoning map. We're trying to get less nonconformities and clear understanding of, possible future uses. And Mark already covered what our code problems are today. So that is our presentation. We can take any questions or comments.
Any questions now? Obviously, we're going to work on this over the next months. Yes, Greg, A.
Greg A., thank you. These are minor, and they may come up later, but just want to throw them out. We're talking about infill sidewalks. I've got some areas in Fourth Ward, for example. There's a really nice house and a really nice sidewalk, and then just a lot.
Sidewalk, yeah.
And it's been a lot for 30 years. Then you got a real nice house and a real nice sidewalk. And in between, you see the kids walking down the sidewalk and then walking out in the street to get by the snow banks and then back on the sidewalk again. There's got to be some time limit that a lot, you get my meaning. There's got to be some time limit that the owner needs to put in a sidewalk, or the city does, or something, and they got to be required to maintain it, snow,
Yep, we can-
whatever.
Still good.
So anyway, something to think about. I'm sure there's other areas in the city. And then the second one was, if you remember that little shopping center at 18th and 53rd, they had in the corner, there was a golf business where they hit against the screen and fix your golf clubs and stuff. And I guess they weren't doing real well. It never would have been approved initially as a bar, but it morphed into a bar because they weren't making money as a golf course. And then we were getting noise complaints and vandalism and all kinds of. So do we now have some way to, how do we monitor that?
So every bar under our current code, and we would keep this consistent, we think going forward, every bar in Bettendorf has a special use permit. Also, any outdoor service area is also a special use permit. So that's a one extra layer of approval that you would need.
But it started off as a golf.
Right, and I'm assuming they had a special use permit for the bar that was there as well. I don't know, but they would need one, in my opinion, going forward.
Okay.
If I can follow up on what Greg was saying.
Sure,
I
Greg.
think what Greg
Jay.
is concerned about is the morphing of uses.
Yes. More
Where
fair uses.
it comes in as something when we see it and we approve it. And what we think is going to be an ancillary or a small portion of the use
I understand what
turns
you're
out
saying
to
now.
sort of dominate the
Yeah.
use.
There's a coffee shop that's coming to mind as you say that.
Yes, sir. I was
Yeah,
thinking.
so
of
I
that,
think
too.
that's a really fair question. I'm not quite sure how to skin that cat yet. That is a problem that we do have. A minor amount of times, I would add. Most business owners are just doing the right
Well,
thing.
it's rare, but it's something to think about.
And so how do we attack that from a legal perspective? I don't have a good answer right now, but I would be glad to research it and maybe talk to, city attorney or whatever.
Thank you, Your Honor.
It might be that something in the application process says you're going to do A, B, and C, and if you end up doing more C than A, you gotta bring it back or you gotta talk to somebody.
Anything else? Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you for the laborious work that you've already done. Definitely a lot of legwork that's gone into both the comprehensive use plan and now the zoning ordinance. So we appreciate your fine work and the work of your staffs. Really one staff, but other staffs involved too.
So absolutely, yes.
All right, anything else on that presentation for the good of the order from council? All right, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We stand adjourned. Good work, people. We'll see you at 7 o'clock tomorrow evening.